Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our live stream at B&H booth here at NAB 2016. I'm Peter Crithary from Sony Electronics, and I'm going to talk about this morning the evolution of the CineAlta platform, the F5 and F55 cameras. I'm going to talk a little bit about the F65 as well. So those three cameras are high-end on the large format motion picture, large sensor motion picture digital camera side. And I'm going to talk about some updates and where we've come from, where we're going, and a new toy here that I have today, our new RAW recorder, the AXS-R7. I'm the marketing manager at Sony Electronics for the CineAlta series of motion picture cameras. All right, so we've come a long way in the last 4 years since we've introduced both the F5 and F55 cameras. We've had a number of very significant firmware updates. I'm going to talk about the latest in our firmware updates here in a little bit. We've also had a significant number of motion picture films, TV shows, documentaries, wildlife. I mean, you name it, the cameras have been used in pretty much every type of production genre that exists out there today. A couple of examples here that you can see on the slides. We have some recent shows that are doing very well. We're very strong in episodic television and top with Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. You can see some of the recent shows that our 55 cameras are working on. Vinyl is a particularly interesting one. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Sneaky Pete. You can see Revolt. Blacklist, of course, is shot on the F55s and a number of other shows. I'd like to call attention specifically to Vinyl, which is airing on HBO currently. It has a very unique Super 60mm film look. It's getting a lot of buzz in the industry right now because of how they did the post-production workflow. It's a very unique look. It's really beautiful. It's shot by a number of cinematographers, Reed Morano ASC, but the pilot with that was actually done by director Martin Scorsese and Rodrigo Prado ASC, and then they carried that look over into the series. So that's shot F55 in 4K as well. And on the feature film side, we have Alice Through the Looking Glass. It's a Disney feature film that's coming out at the end of May, and that's shot on the F65s in 4K. You can hear some of the top cinematographers in the world are using Sony cameras, F55 and F65. You can see Rodrigo Prado. You can also see Academy Award-winning cinematographer Vittorio Storaro and Academy Award winner John Toll ASC. John Toll is currently shooting Sense8 on the F55s in 4K for Netflix, and Vittorio just completed the feature film with Woody Allen, Woody's first digital motion picture film shot on the F65. And in live production, we're very strong, given a number of factors. We have Genlock, we have 4K SDI output, we have RAW recording, we have XAVC onboard recording in 4K, and also obviously the shallow depth of field, the global shutter, which is very important on the F55 for very dramatic lighting effects that you typically see in live performances. So some of the examples that you can see here, U2 was done on a number of F55s, AC/DC, the Katy Perry's Prismatic World Tour, which we're showing in the booth here at the show. It was shot at 55. So typically these productions use anywhere from 15 to 25, 30 cameras, and it's a multi-camera production, and we often mix these cameras with HDC 4300 studio cameras. So it's a very unique mix between the two, and they've proven to be extremely popular for live production. On the Unscripted documentary IMAX side, a number of films are happening and TV series. We've got River Monsters here, which is actually shot 4K 60p on the F55, and that's airing on Animal Planet. We have a number of IMAX documentaries shooting on the F65. We're presenting a couple of those case studies here in the booth at the show. And in the documentary side, we're very, very strong, again, given its portability and its features with the F55 and the picture quality. In case you missed it, just a quick recap of what was happening here at the show on the weekend. Director Ang Lee was here. He gave a keynote on the world's first 120 frames motion picture film in 3D. He showed a few minutes of that film. Looks pretty stunning. This is shot F65. And yeah, really, really amazing. This is another first for the industry, and it's another first for Sony, the first 120 frame per second feature film. So I want to talk a little bit about firmware updates. We've come a long way, as I mentioned earlier, from version 1, version 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, which we released fairly recently. All of these firmware updates have significant new features implemented at no cost to the end user. We take a lot of feature requests from customers, and where it's engineering possible, we implement those features into the cameras. And as I mentioned, in most cases at no cost. Very powerful features have been implemented in the lineup, since 4 years ago, that when we introduced the cameras. And I wanted to recap here version 7. Version 7 was recently introduced. We implemented a new quick menu system, which is very popular, where you don't have to navigate the menu system. You can actually just hit the side buttons on the panel here on the LCD display, and you can quickly jump to all the key features that you need to get to very easily and very efficiently. So that was a huge feature request that we got from a lot of customers that wanted to have a very quick and easy way to get to the most powerful features of the camera right there on the side. So simply hitting the silver buttons on the side of the display here, it jumps to a different page, and each page has 6 features that you can select just by hitting the button to quickly get to that functionality in the cameras for shooting. We also implemented Rec 2020 color space in XAVC for onboard recording. And I'll show you a slide about that here in a minute. And simultaneous 5994 recording. That was a huge request from the Discovery Channel group for documentary where you shoot with a proxy, an onboard proxy in 5994, and at the same time shoot 4K RAW. So the proxy is used for offline editing, offline work, and then they simply conform to the RAW later when they're doing the conforming. Because with 4K shooting with the Discovery network, everything has to be shot in 60p. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Sony's color science and where it's unique for our motion picture cameras. You can see here on the left our color space. The widest triangle is S-gamut 3. And the inner triangle is S-gamut 3.cine. So S-gamut 3 is the widest color gamut of any motion picture camera. It's actually quite a bit wider than Rec 2020, as you can see on the right. Rec 2020 now is used for high dynamic range. The televisions can map to the 2020 color space to give you that much more color information in the picture, much more vibrant and engaging viewing experience. So with S-gamut 3, you're protected for that for the future when you get to those TVs and you want to show your content in high dynamic range. When you shoot in S-gamut 3, you can easily map to Rec 2020 in post-production. And the key to that is if you take a look at the triangle, if you take a look at the picture on the right, you can see that the S-gamut 3 triangular axis in the color spectrum is exactly in line with the Rec 2020 triangle. So when you have color spaces that are directly in line with each other, you can do a very easy transform from one color space to the next very easily and very accurately. If you're off axis, and if you take a look on the left, you can see S-gamut 3 and S-gamut with DCI P3 and Rec 709. If you were to shoot in S-gamut 3, you'd have to have a transform to get over to Rec 709 or P3. But if you shoot S-gamut 3.cine, you can easily map to those color spaces because they're exactly aligned in the color spectrum. So we have S-gamut 3 for higher end production, and we have S-gamut 3.cine specifically for easy mapping to Rec 709 and P3, as you can see here in the pictures. This is a quick picture of the user menu, the quick menu, as I mentioned, on the side panel of the cameras. Very easy, very quick access, very efficient. So what I really want to talk about today is our new RAW recorder, the AXS R7. We actually brought it along here for you guys to see in the stream. This is the AXS R7 new RAW recorder we're introducing here at the show. So its claim to fame are a number of really cool features. We went back to the drawing board and we discussed with a lot of customers that shoot motion picture film, documentary, wildlife, and all these different markets. What do we need to do further with RAW recording, because RAW is becoming a lot more popular. The workflows are much easier to work with now. Actually, the files are very easy to debayer on the timeline. You don't necessarily have to go to an intermediary format to edit directly with the RAW, and you can grade and do all of your post-production with far more latitude than you can with normal compressed codecs that you would typically work with. So the AXS-R7 is the answer to many customers' feedback on taking the raw recording functionality even further than what we did before. So if you take a look at the slide here, it's that the really cool features are pointed out here in red. So, just to recap a little bit on Sony's RAW, we're 16-bit linear RAW. Very powerful, very high quality. We use visually lossless compression, so the files are significantly easier to work with in post-production and transfer times and payloads and so forth. I'll talk more about that here in a minute. So its big claim to fame is, of course, that it's very robust. It's a very tough build. Has very much improved cooling, very low noise, pretty much no noise at all. We have a reinforced plate that connects directly to the camera, so the connection is far more rigid than the R5 recorder is. It's a dual media slot. So if you can see here, it actually takes 2 memory cards in the recorder. And I'll talk about the memory card here in a minute. And also, if you can see here on the slide, it's 4K, 120 frames per second, 4K RAW recording. That's a big deal because it doesn't line skip, it's full resolution. So we had a lot of customers ask us, can you go beyond 60p recording in 4K RAW because high frame rate is becoming more and more popular. And I'm going to have a special guest talk about that here in a minute. We also have up to 30-second cache recording in the recorder. So for wildlife and documentary shooters, if you're filming wildlife or anything that's unpredictable, you don't have to be taking up time or space on the memory cards. You can actually be recording in a 30-second buffer up to 30 seconds in 24p in 4K RAW. So that's a cache recording function that we've been able to implement in the R7, which did not exist in the R5. So for those of you that are familiar with the R5, that's our existing RAW recorder. So the R5's features 2K RAW up to 240 frames per second and 4K RAW up to 60 frames per second. All of those features are also implemented in the AXS-R7. And of course, as I mentioned, robust metal chassis, very rigid mount to the camera, and it's dust and splash resistant as well. So this is just a highlight here. Its big feature is 4K RAW at 120 frames per second. No line skipping. It's full resolution RAW 4K recording, which is really cool. And of course, I mentioned the cache recording up to 30 seconds. Now, obviously, that 30 seconds is going to vary based on frame rate, but the 30-second mark is for 24p recording. So in addition to the RAW recorder, we're also introducing new media. You can see here, I think if I hold it over here, you can see the new black media cards that we're going to introduce for the R7. This is the A series card, slimline cards. And they actually, we have if you see here on the slide, we have the existing blue series of cards. Now, the blue series, the slim cards, are 256 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte, and 1 terabyte in capacity. These cards are 2.4 gigabits per second. That's enough up to 60p 4K RAW recording, but it's not enough for 120p 4K RAW recording. So if you take a look at the picture on the slide here, on the right, this is the new series of cards. These cards will support 4.8 gigabits per second sustained recording. That's what's needed for the 4K RAW. And not only is it double speed for writing, it's also double speed for reading. So you'll be able to, at some point, be able to pull that data off those cards more than double the speed of the existing series. So that's really cool. So both the blue series and the black series are supported in the AXS-R7. What is not supported in the AXS-R7 is the original wider cards. These cards will work in the AXS-R5, the existing RAW recorder. So I just want to recap that because that's really important. The slim A-series cards are the only ones that will work in the R7, and the wider original cards work in the R5. The slim cards also work in the R5 with an adapter, but only the slim cards will work in the R7. Okay, so if you take a look here on the recording times, you can see 24p, 60p, and 120p. Very good, very efficient recording times. Now, as I mentioned before, the key point here is Sony has visually lossless compression in the RAW. We don't capture uncompressed RAW. Our engineers are very talented at codecs. We do codecs for a living going back many, many years with MPEG, XAVC, the HDCam SR codec, and others. So our raw compression is done by our engineers, and it's very unique in that it returns exceptionally high picture quality at very, very low data rates and file sizes. Okay, so in addition to the R7 RAW recorder, we also announced version 8 firmware for the cameras, both the F5 and 55. A big reason for version 8 support is obviously the new RAW recorder, because a lot of the functionality that the RAW recorder is doing is actually controlled by the camera. So the camera needs to be updated to support the functionality of the R7. So that is a big part of version 8. Another big part of version 8 is XAVC Class 480. Now, you may already be familiar with XAVC, Sony's implementation of the H.264 codec. Very high quality, very efficient, very manageable file sizes, only 240 megabits per second in 4K at 24p, which is a fraction of the size of the competing codecs in 4K. So XAVC, currently what's implemented is called Class 300. What that means is Class 300 30p is 300 megabits per second. So obviously you would adjust that data rate based on the frame rate that you're capturing. So 300 megabits per second at 30p. Class 480 is 480 megabits per second at 30p. The reason why we're implementing a higher data rate of XAVC is because we've had customers request just that little bit more punch in the picture quality for certain types of shooting environments. They want that little bit more extra data rate in the file, a little bit higher picture quality in the file for certain types of shooting scenarios. So that's being implemented also in version 8. Now, that's a very important point there with the last bullet point is the F5 will support Class 480 with the optional 4K upgrade license. This is a quick recap here on XAVC for those that are not familiar with it. As I mentioned, only 240 megabits per second in 24p, 90 megabits per second in HD. It's a 10-bit 422 iframe codec. It's extremely efficient, very easy to work with, and very high quality. And you can see a quick comparison here with ProRes. You can see the data rates, 240 megabits versus the 468 megabits in 422 with ProRes, and 704 megabits with the 422 HQ. So we come in quite a bit less in payload than ProRes, and that's in 4K. So much easier to manage, higher quality, and very fast and efficient to work with. On the RAW side, just to recap a couple of things, because this is really important to point out. Again, a lot of productions are migrating over to RAW, especially in today's more modern workflows where computers are much more powerful. The color grading and editing systems can all handle the RAW files natively, and you get significantly better quality when you're shooting in 16-bit linear versus 10-bit or 12-bit variants of other RAW flavors. So we have over 65,000 gradations in the RAW. That's a huge deal in grading, and it's visually lossless and much less data than uncompressed RAW. Okay, so I want to bring up a special guest here right now. DP Jody Eldred actually shot. He's the first DP in the world to shoot with the AXR7, the F55, and Jody's going to very quickly give you a run-through of what he did with the camera and its results in 4K 120. Really quick, because it looks like we're running out of time. Sorry, mate.
That's okay. I'd talk fast. It was a great opportunity to be able to do this. I've done a lot of testing with Sony cameras over the past 15 years or so, and being the crash test dummy, the first person ever to work with something, is not something that's unfamiliar. Enjoy it. We shot 3 specific things to highlight the capabilities of shooting at 120 frames. We shot running in a poppy field. The poppies are in bloom in California. We shot horses running on the beach at sunset, beautiful, iconic, slow-motion stuff. And then we shot some circus performers who are juggling fire and breathing fire, all at 120 frames per second. But what was super impressive is that we're able to do this in RAW, which means when we graded it in HDR, high dynamic range, we're able to get that full spectrum of all the details in the brightest areas and all the details in the darkest areas in the mid-range simultaneously. And we could make it look however we wanted. So if I wanted something bright to really pop, but still be able to see detail in it, because we shot in RAW and because we graded in HDR and are showing it on HDR monitors, we had the capability to do that. And so this is the first time that we've ever been able to do anything like that. And the results were just eye-popping. They really were. It was great to take something that was a prototype and see that this is like the full-on, real deal, super impressive. And where this is going to come in most handy is in the very, very near future, everything is going to HDR. Everything is going to be high dynamic range. All the new TVs that are coming out, the 4K ones, HDR is the future. It's not some gimmicky thing at all. It's amazing when you see it. And the only way you're going to be able to take full advantage of that as a filmmaker, a content creator, or distributor for that matter, is to ensure that your material was captured raw in the first place so that you have the ability to maximize that HDR look that is very much similar to the real human experience. When you see really well shot, well graded HDR, it's like being there. It's like looking out a window. And I've never experienced anything like that before. So this recorder was just a fantastic tool, super simple, super easy to use, and has really amazing capabilities. I don't work for Sony. I'm brand agnostic. I'll use anything, anything that works for me. And this is by far the best tool that I have ever seen in terms of shooting raw and high-speed raw. It's terrific. So I highly recommend it. It's a great tool. Do I sound like a hack? Because I'm not. I just love it. I'm sorry.
All right. Thanks very much, Jody. Really appreciate it.
Let me say, I'm sure that Sony will have on their website soon that footage. If you're at NAB, you'll be able to see it actually in HDR, but otherwise, look for it soon. If you see slow motion circus performers with fire, kids running through a poppy field, horses running at sunset, that's what we shot, and I think you'll like it.
And thank you, Jody. Thank you very much. And if you visit B&H's store, you'll actually see the footage in really high quality on the show floor. All right, so that's pretty much it from us. We really appreciate you guys attending the stream. And one quick last word, you can see our CineAlta magazine here. If you go online to our website, you can read the magazine, production stories from cinematographers, DITs, directors, all in their own words, no marketing, exactly how they use the cameras, so you can learn about how the technology is used in the real world. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Take care.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.